So you got questions, we got answers. It's the title of this panel, but it's broader than that. It's not so much our questions that actually, frankly, worry me. It's the questions of those people out there who are largely misinformed about marijuana. We at the Drug Policy Alliance have a project called the Safety First Project, in which we outreach to parents. We do drug education for parents, largely with teenagers. And in workshops and through our website, we're always getting questions. And regarding marijuana, which is the widest question asked, we get questions about the gateway theory, about lung cancer, about addiction, but most of all, we get questions about potency. So I'd like to share with you, to open the panel, an article that I wrote with Paul Armentano, who is the person I went to consult with when I wanted real information. So really, what's going on with potency? So I'm going to take a few minutes and read to you this article. Heard the latest buzz about cannabis? Word on the street is that today's pot is exponentially more powerful and thus more dangerous than the marijuana available some 20 or even 10 years ago. The nation's drug czar says so. He says, "We're no longer talking about the drug of the 1960s and 1970s," John P. Walters recently warned. This is pot 2.0. Law enforcement says so. Speaking to the Associated Press in June, United States DEA Special Agent Mark R. Troville said, quote, "This ain't your grandfather's or your father's marijuana. This will hurt you. This will addict you. This will kill you," end quote. Pot dealers say so. Advertising to your clientele that you sell only the most potent weed is an effective marketing tool, after all. Even most pot smokers say so. Admit it. Who among you is going to tell your friends that you smoke swag? Of course, just because people say something isn't enough to make it so. Truth is, much of the marijuana available on the market today, just as in past decades, is fairly low-strength, commercial-grade weed. But don't take our word for it. Read what the DEA has to say. According to the agency's 2005 handbook, Drugs of Abuse, of the more than 4,600 domestic samples analyzed by the government between 1998 and 2002, fewer than 2% were found to contain THC levels above 20%. A more blunt assessment, pun intended, comes from the U.S. National Drug Intelligence Center, which states, most of the marijuana available in the domestic market is lower potency, commercial-grade marijuana. Perhaps the most reliable source when it comes to the subject of marijuana potency is the University of Mississippi, which has been randomly testing seized samples of cannabis for THC for over 2 decades. According to the university, average pot potency has increased over the past decades to roughly 8% THC. That said, there's nothing remotely or uniquely dangerous to health about consuming weed that's 8% THC. Unlike alcohol or even aspirin, today's pot still poses no risk of fatal overdose, regardless of its potency. In fact, any physician can prescribe a pill that's 100% THC, and nobody at the drug czar's office seems to mind. Moreover, cannabis consumers readily distinguish between low and high potency marijuana and moderate their use accordingly. In addition, despite claims that marijuana alters the brain, it is important to note that THC, regardless of its potency, is surprisingly non-toxic to the adult as well as the teenage mind. Recently, scientists at New York's Nathan S. Klein Institute reported that they could find, quote, no evidence of cerebral atrophy or loss of white matter integrity, end quote, attributable to cannabis use in the brains of frequent adolescent marijuana users. But what about the suggestion that today's pot is so strong that taking just one puff is a one-way ticket to drug rehab? Predictably, the devil is in the details. Data from the Federal Drug and Alcohol Services Information System confirms that more individuals are enrolled in drug treatment for pot now than ever before. However, the increase is a direct result of the fact that more Americans are being arrested for pot now than ever before. In fact, a new study reports among 27,000 plus adults entered into Texas drug treatment between 2000 and 2005, a whopping 70% of them were diverted to treatment as a condition of sentencing, probation, or parole. Faced with the choice of jail or attending drug treatment, most minor pot offenders understandably choose treatment, whether or not they need it. So if today's pot is essentially the same plant it's always been, with any marginal increase in potency akin to the difference between, shall we say, a cup of tea and an espresso, why is the government claiming otherwise? Mainly to scare parents, particularly those millions of parents today who may have, without incident, experimented with marijuana in the 1970s, when they were about the same age as their children are today. Fortunately for them, while the Fed's latest reefer rhetoric may sound alarming, there's little substance behind the hype.